So welcome everyone. My name is Russ. I'm the high school Spanish teacher here at Oak Grove and director of our secondary program, and I wanted to thank everybody for coming and welcome you. We have an amazing program tonight planned for you, but before we start, would you please join me in that tradition we have here at Oak Grove of starting events like this with a quick moment of silence. Okay, thank you very much. Well, for over 20 years now, we here at the Oak Grove High School have created this opportunity for our seniors to travel over to India and visit our sister schools, and it allows them an opportunity to gain like an insight and a perspective on another country, on quite possibly the world, maybe even like life, that they might not gain otherwise. It also allows them to reflect on themselves, on their experiences before the trip, during the trip, and after the trip. And then from a fun standpoint, it allows them to really create bonds with, really get to know the students, the faculty, and even some of the families over at our sister schools in India. I want to give a very special thank you on behalf of the whole high school to our 3 chaperones this year, who you'll meet in a moment, to Mary, Sean, and Ray. And then also another very special thank you to the AG Trust, which is that entity out there which actually makes, through their support, this entire experience possible for the school and for our seniors. So thank you to everyone involved. So, without further ado, would you... Without further ado, would you please help me welcome up to the podium one of our chaperones from this year, who also happens to be the 5th grade teacher here at Oak Grove, Mary Kelly.
Thank you so much, Russ. Well, good evening, Oak Grove friends and family. I'm so happy to be here, and I know I speak for Sean, Ray, and all of the seniors when I say it's such a pleasure to share this, the memories of this trip with you. We have quite a treat in store for you as we take you on a personal journey to the exotic East by way of our own experiences and memories. Each of our globe-trotting travelers has chosen a memorable moment or theme from this epic journey to present to you through storytelling. We had the pleasure of visiting 3 of our sister schools. We chose this year to only visit 3 as opposed to traditionally 4, so that the students could acclimate to their surroundings and really feel at home at each of the places and meet many of the students and staff there and really feel grounded before leaving and going on to the next school. So the first school that we spent our, I believe, 9 or 10 days at, our first 9 or 10 days, was Rishi Valley School. The second school was the Valley School, and the third was the school, KFI. So, here to tell you a little bit about our first landing spot is my husband, Sean.
Good evening, everybody. So I was really glad that Rishi Valley was our first stop because it was one of my favorites, and being as though I haven't dealt with any students since I was a student, it was really nerve-wracking for me. So it was nice to have a spot where we could be away a little bit and get to know them, which was probably what I was nervous about the most. And after Makani asked if I would run, and I promised, of course, I was kind of expecting that to be a hollow promise, which turned out to be wrong, because every other day I would get woken up and we would run. I enjoyed the running, and I also really enjoyed teaching them setback and scat, which we got to play card games in the first couple nights. And after the 3rd night, I think they had all gotten it well enough to beat me for the next week and a half, which Jack and Leah easily did over and over again. So for me, it was really nice getting to know them, getting to actually hang out with them. And there was a bunch of things that they enjoyed too, including decorating for New Year's Eve, attending classes that they get to pick up, playing soccer and volleyball, and befriending a lot of the stray dogs and cats that were kind of around our house at the time. Here's Jeremy to kind of tell you more about his stories.
Good evening. My story is called The Road to Rishi Valley. I knew from stories that driving in India is like no other. I knew there were tons of people, and from pictures and videos, it seemed like they were all doing their own thing. I didn't know just how crazy it was until we got into the bus to Rishi Valley. We had just landed at Bangalore International. We'd been traveling for almost 30 hours, and we had barely slept. We schlepped our luggage through customs, past the sleeping security guard, and were spat out on the road by the arrivals gate. We were waiting for 2 buses from Rishi Valley to pick us up and truck us to the school. As we waited, we commented on the many restaurants that were beckoning us potential patrons to come spend our rupees, and we laughed about the Chipotle knockoff called California Burrito. After almost an hour, the first bus pulled up. In front of us was a Sprinter van-esque vehicle with green LED strips around the roof and under the body. We loaded our luggage on top, and most of us piled into the cramped transport vehicle. The rest of us waited for the second bus to pull up, but instead were instructed to get into this small minivan that screeched to a halt right behind the bus. The remaining 6 of us managed to smash ourselves into the back seats of the van, and we took off the road down to Rishi Valley. We had a 3-hour drive ahead of us. It was a little after 4 a.m. We took off past the airport and onto the highway. There was probably only about 100 feet of visibility anywhere you looked from a weird mixture of smog and fog. The air was oddly sweet with the smell of trash. The first thing I noticed about driving in India is that they have speed bumps everywhere, including the freeway. Instead of keeping everyone from exceeding a moderate speed to keep traffic flowing, people just slowed all the way down from 60, rolled over the bump, then floored it back up to speed, over and over again. The constant acceleration and consequent deceleration began to make me sick, so getting off the highway was a relief. We exited the highway and were instantly deposited on a much smaller 2-lane road that wound its way through villages and rice paddies. Rural India was just waking up. Groups of people were gathered around small fires drinking tea out by the road. As we bounced along in our little van, we had a front row seat of rural India rubbing the cobwebs of sleep from its eyes. As the sun began to rise, the world around us became brighter. The pea soup fog began to burn off, and the ever-lightening sky signaled for other cars to join us on the road. This was our first taste of the truly unique Indian driving experience. I began to notice the lack of automotive safety features we take for granted in America, such as lanes and stop signs. I also noticed that basic traffic laws that we take for granted, that become second nature in America, seem to be either untaught or ignored on the roads of India. I thought the 1 car length for every 10 miles per hour rule was universal, but I think maybe a poor translation led to India's 1 driver's girth length between cars regardless of speed. Our driver would fearlessly be 1 to 2 feet behind a massive truck and then swerve out into oncoming traffic just to see if it's safe to pass. If there's a truck coming and it's only 300 feet away, it's no problem. Our driver would just start passing and expect the oncoming truck to get out of the way, which it thankfully always did. This crazy technique was present in every driver, no matter what type of car he was driving. It's very surprising that there aren't many Indian race car drivers. I'm sure they'd win every time. All of us in the car felt the same fear as we swerved in and out of oncoming traffic. We all felt our stomachs drop every time we came out from behind the massive truck in front of us and looked straight into the headlights of yet another oncoming truck. It was only the very first day of the trip. We haven't even gotten to the first school yet, and I already felt my classmates and I getting closer together in mutual terror and exhilaration. Next up, we have a good story from Jack Hartley.
When we first arrived in Rishi Valley, we were exhausted. We were fresh off of 36 hours of travel, and it was 7:30 a.m. We had a 16-hour flight to Dubai, a 2-hour layover, followed by a 5-hour flight to Bangalore, followed by a 4-hour bus ride to the school. All we wanted to do was sleep, and the moment we got out of the bus, Mary told us that we were going to join the other students for breakfast. This was the worst case scenario. not only did we have to go and join the students for breakfast, but we were all supposed to spread out, take different tables, and introduce ourselves to groups of different students. The moment we walked in, we all kind of ignored this rule and decided, you know what? Let's save our introductions for later. Let's just get this meal out of the way and go take a nap. So we finished breakfast, and as we were leaving, Mary told us that a staff member had approached her and told her that there were games at 4:30 and that we were all welcome to play. When Ben and I heard this, we were ecstatic. We were really looking forward to playing soccer in India, and we were excited that we could just start right away on the first day. So we kind of wasted the whole day napping and hanging out and getting used to the school. And finally, when 4:30 rolled around, we made our way over to the games field. Because, as you can see, there's not much of a field. It's more of a hardened dirt patch, which we ended up loving after a couple days. But when Ben and I first got there, there were a group of students, players right by the goalpost, and they were all talking and laughing and having fun. And we were standing about 15 feet away, looking at each other like, we don't know any of these guys, what are we gonna do? Should we just walk up? And we kind of just stood there for 5 minutes and watched them for a while, like, okay, we gotta approach these guys at some point. And after a while, they took off running for a lap around the field to warm up. And lucky for us, a boy named KP, a senior, who I ended up, as all of you know, really, really liking. He approached us and introduced himself. We were like, oh my God, thank God, this is a gift from God, like, it's no longer awkward. And he took us on a lap of our own, and then helped us stretch and introduced us to the coach, and told us, kind of what the deal was with soccer, and made sure that we got on teams. And Ben and I were like, God, I hope we're on the same team. And the coach goes, okay, so one of you on either team, so we know it's even. And Ben and I were like, oh my God, we don't know anybody, and now we can't even be together on the same team, so we're totally lost. So we started playing, and it was really hard. After a couple minutes, we noticed that we were the only two players who weren't wearing cleats, and we were on dirt. So we were just slipping and sliding around, which sounds kind of fun at first, but slipping and sliding on dirt really isn't that fun. It really isn't. About 10 minutes later, we were kind of getting used to it, and I was sprinting after a ball. I was coming down kind of right, I don't know if you can see me. Right, there I am, right there. I was sprinting down, chasing after a ball, and I slipped in the dirt, fell, and rolled over, and kind of did like a shoulder roll on the ground, which I imagine looked pretty cool, because I rolled right back up to my feet. And I was like, oh, sweet, it doesn't really hurt. And I looked down, and my knee is just covered in blood, and it's dripping down my leg, and I was like, oh, God, I hope I'm not hurt. And I kept running. Anyways, so a bunch of the players asked me, like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine, don't worry about it. And we kept going, everything was fine, and a couple minutes later, someone passes me the ball, and it bounces up off a clump of dirt, hits me directly in the knee, and as it rolls away, I look at it, and there's a blood splotch about this big, going, dude, and I'm like, oh my God. I could not have been more embarrassed. I was thinking, it's my first day, we have 9 more days to go, I really want to play soccer every day, and here I am, ruined their soccer ball in my first 10 minutes on the field. Could this get any worse? So after that, people started kind of taking notice, and they were kind of giggling to themselves as they saw it go, ooh, because it rolled by. And a little bit after that, my teammate comes up to me and says, like, do you want to wash off your knee? It looks like there's dirt in there, and kind of like the ball. So he took me over to a water fountain, and they paused the game, and we were kind of in those bushes over there, and I was washing off my knee, and when I came back, I looked and I was like, that ball doesn't have a blood splotch on it. And everyone was kind of giggling as I came back on the field, and I was like, oh, where'd it go? And I looked over, and just over to the right, the girls were playing a soccer game, and they had a soccer ball with a big red splotch on it. So the boys, when I was gone, they didn't say anything. They were too nice. They're the nicest guys ever. They had just switched the balls out with the girls while I was gone for like maybe 2 minutes. And when I came back, there was this fresh new soccer ball, and I was like, all right, awesome. So that was kind of the end of that game, but it was really awesome. The guys were all so nice, and over the course of the trip, over the 9 days, I played soccer every day, and the seniors ended up inviting us to a couple games in the morning, so Ben and I woke up at 6:30 and went and played before breakfast, and we really got to know the players really well. And it was just a really awesome way to bond over a shared sport that we all loved. And it was just kind of the highlight of my trip. So, thank you. Up next, we have a story from Bailey.
Anyone who knows me personally knows that athletics don't usually excite me. In fact, I pretty much despise almost every team sport there is. As much as I wish I had the trait of being naturally athletic, I don't. In Rishi Valley, the school is located in Andhra Pradesh and it contains a total of 360 acres. Having been traveling for almost 30 hours, I was grateful when nothing was mandatory for the first night. Then, things changed. During the day of New Year's Eve, all of the students at Rishi Valley were so excited about the scavenger hunt that happens every year. And I was really excited because of all the chatter I was hearing. Then I heard the news. One girl sitting across from me at breakfast the day of the scavenger hunt, which was scheduled for the afternoon, said, "Oh my gosh, last year on the 6 mile, I just fell down and I didn't want to finish." My eyes shut up. 6 miles! I practically shouted at her. All the kids proceeded to explain that yes, my nightmare was true. This oh-so-fun scavenger hunt would be a total of 6 miles. All day, all I could think about was how once again, I did not want to participate. I was extremely irritable, tired, and hungry for some American food. Not to mention, the scavenger hunt would be taking place at the equivalent of 2 a.m. here. I was certain that I was going to keep my group behind and that I would be all alone running around and probably get lost. I knew I would not be able to keep up with everyone considering my not so naturally athletic skills. I was tired, grumpy, and definitely homesick. The time finally came when it was time to meet up with all the students on the big field on the further side of campus. The whole walk there, I just complained. I feel bad for the people that had to listen to me. I felt like I was going to be weird considering we hadn't even interacted with any of the students that much, and I wouldn't know anyone. I was more nervous than anything. The way that the teams were divided was by athletic skill. Of course, I had to get in a group with one of the highest athletic skills. Another nightmare. That meant our clues were further apart and we had the same amount of time as everyone else. Running was definitely expected. The leader of our group gets the first clue. They figure out where it is, and I finally understand that our clue is at the Rural Education Center. I ask the girl next to me, "How far is that?" She replies, "That's really far," and smiles at me. Every bone in my body shook with dread and the fear of falling behind as we started running off towards the very far destination. You would not believe how many times I tried to get lost for my group. They would just never leave me. No matter how much I complained, it didn't stop their constant uplifting attitude trying to cheer me on. Finally, I gave up on the idea that I would ever be able to get away from the constant running. I knew that I was falling behind the group, and pretty soon the closest person in my group was really far away. After I couldn't see her anymore, I made the decision to head back in the direction of the school instead of wandering around rural India. Back at the school, I walked around and I saw my own classmates running around with the kids from their groups. I was happy to see that they were happy, even if, at the time, I wasn't able to feel the same. Finally, the bell rang, signifying that a team had won and the hunt was over, so I finally wandered back towards the field. At the field, I saw how out of breath my team was, and I suddenly had this burst of not feeling homesick for a second. Even during my homesick days in my trip, I will always find comfort in the ways that Oak Grove shows in my everyday life. I was uncomfortable having to run all around rural India, but I was pushed by the community that I was surrounded with. The sense of unity that overwhelmed me while I watched the other students smiling and laughing at each other made me think of being at El Cap or during break right outside this room. On this day, maybe I wasn't able to utilize the idea of always finishing what you start or toughing it out, but I learned something even greater. Family doesn't have to be biological, and I didn't need to be at home to feel at home. Up next, we have Wamiki.
It was New Year's Eve and our class was getting ready to go to the Rishi Valley celebration. I arrived to have dinner and hot chocolate. As everyone gathered at the open-air assembly hall, I continued conversing with the students I met there until the celebration began. When I entered, I admired the decorations that the 11th graders of Rishi Valley and my class helped create earlier that day. Their theme was Chinese New Year, even though that wouldn't be from them. After some time, I sat down to watch their hilarious awards show. Some of the gag awards were like, who would always be late in class and who would always sleep the most. Incidentally, our very own Jack Dew actually won. He won most popular, even though when he went on stage, he had no idea what he was doing. Regardless, being the showman that he was, he put a whole lemon in his mouth, even though he was only supposed to drink the juice of it. Emily won Best Dressed, even though none of the clothes she wore that night belonged to her. She made sure to credit Maddie, Mary, and Leah for dressing her that evening. Later in the evening, Jack Dew had a lip sync battle with John, but again, Jack Dew had no idea what he was doing, but he looked like he was having fun. As the night continued, we played various games with the students of Rishi Valley, including musical chairs. I was one of the very few students in my class who participated. I was disappointed that I eventually lost, but the students from Rishi Valley were bound to win, because how aggressive they were just for sitting down on a chair. As the night continued, we tried to participate in various dances. I'm not a big fan of dancing, and so I didn't even plan on joining in at first. I just watched a few of the girls in my class looking confused as they did it. I eventually decided to join and try after all, because it was New Year's and no one was celebrating any other way. I thought to myself, how hard could it be? Well, it was actually really confusing. It was fast-paced and the demonstrations were hard to follow. Nevertheless, I did eventually get into it. I even dragged Jack Dew into it. I consider that my greatest accomplishment when I was there. Seeing the confusion on his face was priceless. The dancing continued for a few hours or so. On the last half hour of the eve, the 11th graders, along with a few remaining students in my class who were still awake, stayed at the bonfire till midnight. I talked to the students there for the last remaining minutes of 2016. At midnight, instead of hearing loud music or watching the ball drop on TV or hearing fireworks as I was used to, we all just sat together and counted down to midnight. As soon as it was midnight, I just said Happy New Year's to the students there and a few remaining of my classmates. As I walked back to the guest house with my classmates, I remember thinking how quiet, peaceful, and fun this particular New Year night had been.
As a lover of food, I went to India with a feeling I would come back with some interesting culinary tales. I expected them to involve sweet, unusual desserts, or cool mango lassi, perhaps melancholy reminiscence of the chai or chutneys. I was right. I did come back with a story of food, but one that was very different than my previous expectation. This is the story of my cooking class in Rishi Valley. I connected with a girl named Samiksha almost instantly at Rishi Valley. I spent almost every day of field games lying on the carpet of her dorm and snacking on cool oranges as we related on the trivial aspects of our high school lives. Whenever the topic of our favorite foods came up, Samiksha's face fell. As a boarding student, she was limited to the school's cafeteria food and was desperately missing the street samosas and tikka masala from her hometown in Bombay. That's when she confided in me about the masala ramen packets she kept hidden in her room to ease the constant food homesickness. I watched her eyes light up to a UV status at the mention of the noodles, and she made me promise we would make them together before I left. The masala ramen, otherwise known as Maggi, was what they called their illegal food. It was not allowed by the faculty, so they had to make it without causing suspicion. We made an impromptu plan to have a little cooking session the next day, and I offered using our guest house to cook in so she wouldn't get caught. We met the next day, and I let Samiksha and 3 other girls who had heard about the unveiling of Maggi packets into my room, all of them giggling and bursting in excitement. In their hands, they had a festive, holiday-decorated cookie tin and 5 packets of ramen wrapped under a wool blanket. I was instantly suspicious at the cookie tin, but my jaw dropped to the ground when they began heating up bath water into it. I asked Samiksha about her intentions with this assumedly unsanitary bath water, and she shook her head in confusion. She told me, of course, that it was for the ramen. Don't you know how to cook noodles? She asked me. The girls laughed at my shocked expression and continued ripping packets into the tin. 10 minutes later, I found myself staring at 4 girls shoveling into their mouths bright, red, lukewarm noodles that crunched in their teeth. They tucked into that cookie tin of ramen like it was the first edible thing they had seen in weeks. Samiksha looked up at me expectantly. My fork was hesitant in my hand as I weighed the pros and cons of joining in. Although the cons outweighed the pros exceedingly, I felt like this was more than just ramen. This was initiation. I knew that to decline would somehow show a weakness or ungratefulness and dissolve this wonderful new sense of camaraderie I was experiencing in our secret cooking session. So I bravely dug my fork in and joined the feast. That memory of sneaking into contraband food and squishing side by side while shoveling in half-cooked pasta will always stick with me. There was a sense of true friendship that came with our unexpected bonding expedition. I left Rishi Valley with 2 things from that experience. One was a ramen packet with a handmade card taped to the side. It said, "Don't open this until we meet again. Love, your friend Samisha." The other was a sickness that lasted a week. Both were worth it.
We had some incredible experiences in India, but at the end of the day, when we got back to the hostel, we always ended up talking about what we missed about home. For some people, it was a Santa Barbara-style burger from The Habit. For others, it was the soft mattresses that will never again be taken for granted. Me, I miss my family. And when my parents were only reachable by a measly email once a week, I turned to the other part of my family, my dogs. No matter where you are in India, you know there's going to be a dog. There isn't necessarily a breed to call these dogs. The closest thing you could say would be stray. They're all very similar, with the same tan fur, long skinny nose, and muscular bodies. At this point, they've interbred so much that what's left is just Indian dog. However they came to me, they all seem to know that if they looked up at me with those puppy dog eyes, they wouldn't be ignored. Our class has fittingly and lovingly, at least on my part, nicknamed them all Dog. From the start, I knew that I had to stay as attached as possible. Everyone told me not to touch them because the streets of India are filled with trash and bacteria that could probably kill me if given the chance. And that's where they live. It was very hard for me to resist the urge to give each of them the love they deserve. Then an Indian student told me something that changed everything. The dogs with divots in their ears had been vaccinated. From then on, there was no chance of me staying away from them. At the first school, Rishi Valley, there was plenty of dogs walking around the campus, but one in particular kept coming by our hostel. I recognized him every time because he had one defining characteristic, a bunch of scabs all over his back. It was disgusting. And even I only pet him on his head, and after I would wash my hands and sanitize them, but it was worth it. The look he gave me was adorable. I named him Scabby, against the wishes of the group. But that was the name that stuck. He soon became something akin to a pet. Towards the end of the trip, I learned that maybe the reason he kept coming back was the food that Jack Dew kept sneaking him while the chaperones were looking. Either way, Scabby made a lasting impression on me. The locals may not have batted an eyelash at the sight of a dog, but I chose to see my puppies in each one, and was comforted in a way I didn't know possible. People say home is where the heart is, but I say home is where the pets are. Next up is Jack Dew.
We really should have inserted a GPS into Jack's body before we left California. No, that's not good enough. 100-meter leash or shock collar is what we need. So every time Jack disappears, we could give him a shock. No, that's too anti-all group. I do really appreciate that Mary and Sean, who are also good friends, didn't put those ideas into action, although they might secretly have wanted so many times during the trip when I went off on my own. Poor Mary. In fact, during the last day of the trip, even if I was standing right in front of her, she would ask, "Has anyone seen Jack?" When I am alone, I find that I can observe the world, which in this case was Indian, as it truly is. By myself, I am free from any judgment or influence, and my attention can be given to whatever is right in front of me, just to observe, just to feel, just to experience what is. Let me give you an example. So when I got a bloody cut on my knee after almost dying on the muddy soccer field, I decided to take myself to the rural hospital alone. However, after limping on one leg for what felt like an eternity, my passion to explore quickly diminished. Luckily, I saw a motorcycle heading my way, and without thinking, I flagged it down. They dropped me off at the hospital without ask for anything for this kind of service. When I entered the rural hospital, I froze. I saw women, lots of women, maybe more than 70. They were dressed in white saris and in black burqas. This was not what I had seen yesterday with my classmates in the late afternoon. These patients were suffering. They were in pain. Suddenly, the nurse who had welcomed us the day before noticed me standing there with my bloody knee. I should add that I was not really a model example of an 18-year-old boy. I was screaming and laughing the whole time because of prickly pain. My strange reaction attracted lots of women to come and look at me through the window. To be honest, I felt like a celebrity. The nurse was too polite to laugh out loud. I asked her about the women outside. She told me that although women were responsible for making meals, they were always the last to eat, which often meant they didn't eat at all. As a result, they suffered from the malnutrition and stomach pains. When I lifted my head and observed all these women who had come to see this goofy Chinese guy, I felt a current of sympathy and love go through my heart. And at the same time, I felt extremely powerless to do anything. The next day, I brought some dry fruit to the nurse and some sweets for those women who had touched my heart so deeply. I wish I could tell you many more tales of my disappearance which led to such fruitful discoveries about the true nature of human beings. Even though they did tend to make Mary pull her pink hair out. I made friends with so many elementary school kids who had the most admirable patience to teach me Hindi. A kind teacher from one of the schools took me on a special trip to have henna done on my both arms and openly share with me his culture and friendship. And when I joined a dialogue about the similarity between Upanishads and G. Krishnamurti's teachings, I decided to spend the rest of my day at the study center rather than join my peers for sightseeing. This experience led me to my own spiritual journey. After the Indian trip, I spent 10 days in silence at the meditation center on my own. When I am brave and passionate enough to see this world for what it actually is, my life is somehow changed, and will never quite be the same in a good way. Thanks, India.
Junket at heart, it's junket to shatter. No, no. You're another with the wild and the jungle of the heart. And are you mine? I wanna make you happy. I wanna make you feel alive. Let me make you happy. I wanna make you feel alive. I wanna make you happy. Changing all the strings on the right method traveling song about all the billion highways and the cities at the break of dawn. Well, I guess the best that I can do now is pretend that I've done nothing wrong, and dream about a train that's gonna take me back where I belong. Well, now the ocean speaks and spits, and I can hear it from the interstate. And I'm screaming at my brother on the cell phone, he's far away. And I'm saying nothing in the past or future ever will feel like today. Until we're walking out.
So can you see why that was a wonderful place to spend our first 10 days in India? It was well, Rishi Valley is a boarding school. They have about 360 students, and they claim 1 acre of land per student. So it was a sprawling campus that we were able to enjoy. The next school that we went to is the Valley School, and that's in Bangalore. So it was about a 4 to 5 hour drive for us. And this school is much like Oak Grove in that it's a day school primarily, and they have students from preschool all the way through high school. And they have a small boarding program of about 30 students who we were able to spend time with. But it was this school that was particularly near and dear to my heart because 8 years back, I spent a year there teaching in the lower school. And it was really wonderful to see the students who then were kindergartners and first graders, who are now juniors and seniors in high school, remember me. And it was really a wonderful experience. They were a bit daunted by the hair color, and I was told by one too many people that I had lost weight. But anyway, that being said, this was a place where we spent quite a bit of time at the school, but because it was right near Bangalore, we also did quite a bit of sightseeing in Bangalore city itself and Mysore. This was also the school where we were able to have a 2-night homestay with a family. So each of the seniors went off with a family and spent the weekend with them. So here to tell you about that experience is Maddie.
Her name was Amaya. My first thought upon meeting my 11th grade host sister was, oh no. She had like 1,000,001 ideas for what we should do over the next 2 days, and I had to choose which ones we did. If you know me at all, you know that I really don't like making decisions, especially after 8-hour bus rides. But once I was in her car on that Saturday afternoon, I realized that she and I have a lot in common in terms of the music we listen to, the movies we watch, and even the makeup we wear. Later, I learned that we also share many interests and personality traits, including our passion for making music and a tendency to be indecisive. This is the story of how I found myself at home, 9,000 miles away from Bohai. The homestay was the peak of my experience. Throughout the weekend, I was actually shocked at how little felt foreign. Being with a family like Amaya's was comforting, despite being located in the middle of one of the biggest cities in India, where the streets are filled with cows, entire families on single motorcycles, constant honking, and an interesting range of smells. Shortly after realizing that we're both musicians, Amaya took me to a classical concert. Indian classical music is much like everything else in India. It's bright, it's lively, it's unique, it takes its time, and for many, needs to be taken with a grain of salt, or masala. But being a music person and somebody considering studying world music, I loved every song, no matter the length. I expected that many Indian kids would know classic bands like the Beatles, but I really didn't think that they would also love 21 Pilots and Coldplay. I never imagined that I would have a conversation during my trip about the tragically inadequate Indian Netflix. It doesn't even have the show Friends. One night, Bailey, her host sister Malvika, and their friend Amulya stayed for a sleepover. The remainder of the night was full of pizza, silly selfies, pajamas, movies, and long conversations. It was reassuring to feel like I was having a normal sleepover with a new friend. This combination of cultural richness and comfort, of foreign and familiar, set the tone for the rest of the weekend. The next day, Amaya and I visited temples and ate traditional home-cooked South Indian cuisine, but we also went shopping and played laser tag. I will never forget that weekend. I love how in this world, two people can share a genuine connection over shared interests, even when separated by a hemisphere and a history.
I was in the Valley School, and the days were long and tiring. Walking from one end of the campus to the other, I felt like a jungle explorer. It wasn't quite as much walking as the Rishi Valley School, but there both the scenery and the knowledge that I was isolated helped me on my journey. There, I was close enough to the bustling city of Bangalore to feel the fatigue of civilization, yet I was bonded with the rural landscape and better for it. There was complete balance, a state that I'd waited for so long, and it was in this perfect coexistence that I let my feet take me to the study center for perhaps the third time that week. The study center had a library, a large room to sit in with comfy cushions, and tea that literally burned negative energy right out of me. Everything that it took to keep a nerd like me happy. I probably enjoyed the monkey's presence a little more than one should. They say you're not supposed to stare a monkey in the eye. Well, I was sitting in the study center one day, attempting to understand education and the significance of life by Krishnamurti, and I saw some monkeys outside the window. I noticed their almost human features. I guess some part of me thought that they were small humans, lost from the rest. I saw a monkey perched on the veranda, and I watched in awe as the tiny primate before me slowly expanded and contracted with the flow of breath through its even tinier lungs. My eyes quickly widened in horror as I realized the monkey could see me out of the corner of its eye. And as soon as it turned to look at me, I turned around to resume reading the book. But this time, I simply gazed at little black marks on a page, as I couldn't focus on anything except the angered primate behind me. I remember the feeling I had vividly. I felt as if the world were shrinking, as if all the rooms I had passed through on my way there were fragments of a dream. I felt as if I never knew anyone, and I had never had any past experiences. I felt so present. The monkey jumped up on the window and sill and started violently kicking the glass. I knew it couldn't get through the glass, but my curious mind couldn't help going there. I was so scared that I scurried a few feet away and turned around to have a sort of staring contest with the animal. I was both the spectator and the zoo animal. Just as, being in India, I felt like a visitor and native at the same time. All of this happened to me in an instant, and I quickly squatted in an alert position, much like the distant cousin of this monkey that I was. Something snapped in me and sent me back millennia in our evolution, so we could meet like this, face to face. I dropped my book on the floor, not wanting to acknowledge the fact that the rush of blood was caused by a territorial dance. Indeed, I had touched base with my primitive self and learned something new about primates. This seemingly insignificant event stuck with me long after it happened, because it made me realize that maybe my visit to India was in fact a return to the lands I had once known. I knew a lot about this strange place before going there. India was the birthplace of the Buddha. India was a British colony. India has the oldest civilization. I never knew that I would feel strangely at home there, witnessing monkeys at play.
Okay, so what do you get when you put 14 teenagers in charge of their own laundry? A lot of procrastination. So before we left on the trip, everyone always told us that it's best to wash your clothes the day that you wear them so that you don't get a huge pileup at the end when you're trying to switch schools. So for the most part, I was pretty successful at it, except for the Valley School. The day before we left, I piled everyone's laundry into this little tiny washing machine that we had at our hostel's kitchen. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. Like, I went around every single room and asked for every single person's laundry so that we could get it all done before we left. So we put it in, we waited a really long time, and the next step was to get it onto these clotheslines that were on the roof. And the way you got there was you went outside and you climbed these fire escape green looking stairs on the outside of the building, and you hung it up. So I'm there and I take this huge shower bucket from my bathroom, so it's the only thing big enough to have all the laundry. And me and Tassie are putting it in the bucket, and we try to lift it, and it feels like it's bricks. Like, I cannot lift it to save my life. Like, I'm sitting there and I start dragging it on the ground, kind of getting it to the door, and I'm there and I'm dragging it and slowly making my way, and I hear Tassie going, there's a monkey outside. And sure enough, I look up and I see a monkey guarding the door. And it's not one of those little monkeys that we've been seeing the entire trip. They're little, they're ugly but cute, you know, they have like wrinkled faces, big ears, and they seem kind of harmless. Not this one. This was the biggest monkey I'd seen the entire trip, and at the time I was terrified. Like, I didn't know what to do. I needed to get these clothes out to dry, yet I couldn't go past because the monkey could attack me or it could get inside and eat everything or freak everyone out, and I had no idea what to do. So I'm sitting there and I'm shaking, kind of trying to get the courage to open the door, and I go and I lift my hand and my hand is like shaking like this. My heart is racing and I don't know what to do, and I look back at Sean all panicked, and I'm like, can you please come with me? And he just goes and he's like, yeah, sure, let's do this. Yeah, we can do it. I'm like, okay, we can do it, okay. And so we kind of open the door and we scoot around and we kind of scoot against the wall so the monkey doesn't get in, and we walk, and I'm walking and I can see it staring at me through the corner of my eyes, following my every move. And I'm just thinking like, oh my god, is he gonna attack? Is he a he? Are male monkeys more aggressive than female monkeys? Does it matter? Like, what is gonna happen? And I'm going really slowly, trying to get past the monkey, hoping it doesn't notice me. And as I get a little bit past it, I just sprint to the other side of the hostel. Like, I get as far away from the kitchen as I can, and I just run. And I'm looking and I'm like, yes!
thank God I made it. I made it past the monkey. And I look around and I look down and I realize I forgot my laundry. And the one thing I needed was still stuck behind the mesh door, guarded by this scary monkey. But it was okay, because this time I'd made it past, and I was like, yeah, I did it once, I can do it again. And I started walking back with this new sense of confidence, right? And I'm walking, and I get there, and everyone's outside, kind of taking pictures of the monkey, going around. And I get the laundry, and I'm just dragging it along the ground again, and Emily's helping me a little bit. And I look around, and I realize that the monkey is not alone. The monkey has brought friends, and we are completely outnumbered and surrounded by monkeys. Like little monkeys, big monkeys. The monkeys are hanging from the roof, they're on the stairs, they're in the trees, they're in the bushes. Like you can't take 2 steps without running into a monkey. And I'm just like, okay, great, what do I do now? And there was this pile of laundry with too many monkeys on the stairs to get up, and I look around and Jack and John have this idea, and they take these two mops with like these blue things on the end, and they start swinging at the monkeys. Like, they start going and hitting them, not actually hitting them, they didn't actually touch the monkeys, but they just start swinging, going, and the monkeys are shooing away a little bit, and we're like making room so that we can go up, and all the time we're going up, and they were just laughing and hitting it and going and just giggling the entire time. We managed to get up and hang the laundry, and it was one of those times that it was like a small event that happened, probably took 10 minutes in total, but it was one of those memories that really stuck with me, and really, it was kind of a very nice part of my trip because my entire class came together and we kind of went through this obstacle and we went past the monkeys and we did our laundry, and it was really nice. Thank you. Next is John.
Hey. One of the funniest things that happened on this trip for me was at the Valley School. We were asked to watch a play in which the students were rehearsing something they were putting on about Galileo. And it was super long and super verbose, and it really didn't seem to be put together that well yet. And we sat there in the amphitheater, and when it was over, the staff invited us to have some lemonade and samosas over in the serving area, which we were very thankful for. So I went over to the serving area and grabbed myself a big plate of samosas, loaded up a big pile. As I ate them, I looked around, and on the sides of the buildings and creeping around the corners, there were these big hairy monkeys, everywhere, looking and seeing the samosas. And then when I was done, when my classmates were done, I took my last samosa and I held it in my hand, and we began to walk back to the main part of the campus. And as we made our way through the amphitheater, I noticed that it was absolutely covered from head to foot with monkeys. And I looked out of the corner of my eye and saw an especially large monkey, and I stared him in his blue eyes. He had these beautiful eyes. And he saw my samosa, and he was threatened by my eyes, and so he lunged at me, and I screamed like a girl and ran as fast as I could. And he sat there eating the samosa I had thrown as if nothing had happened. And I saw my classmates alarmed as to what had occurred, they were looking around. Anyway, it's sort of moments like that made the trip, I think, especially meaningful. Funny things where it wasn't planned and it wasn't scheduled, but it just sort of happened, and it's something my friends and I can laugh about, so.
So please join us now for some delicious Indian delicacies. out in the hallway here. And then please join us back again in 15 minutes or so.